She didn't fall in love with your kindness. She fell in love with your absence. It wasn't your touch that left her trembling. It was the locked door in your voice, the room she was never allowed to enter. You could be kind, generous, attentive and still. She only remembered the moment you looked away. You thought withholding would push her away, but that pause, that shadow, that silence, it birthed her obsession. Her fingertips hovered just above your phone when you left the room, not because of what you said, but because of what you never explained. Her eyes scanned your face not for affection, but for secrets. You were her symptom. She was your echo, and neither of you understood the infection. The more she guessed, the more she needed, the less you revealed, the more she rewrote you. That's how women love, not with logic, but with projection. You were the blank wall on which she painted her fantasy, and then punished you for not living inside it. If this whisper already lives inside your past, let it echo. Like the video. Leave your shadow in the comments. Subscribe, and stay where silence begins to speak. Obsession is not born from pleasure, but from denied access to the unconscious fantasy. You didn't notice the moment it happened. The first time her gaze changed not from softness to suspicion, but from warmth to inquiry. She didn't ask where you were last night. She didn't accuse. She simply tilted her head a little longer. The silence after your answer was heavier than the answer itself. That's how it begins, not with betrayal, but with the idea of something withheld, not a crime, but a door shut, quiet, at the end of a hallway you built without blueprint, and somehow she hears a sound behind it. You thought desire was something she chose, but no, it chose her through you, through the gaps in your story, the lapses in your rhythm, the unfinished gestures. Her interest did not arise because of what you offered, but because of what you refused to articulate. Her fingers never itched for your skin the way they itched to know what you didn't say. You were too available in one moment, then too quiet the next, and the space between those contradictions became the trap her mind couldn't stop returning to. She never said it aloud, but you could feel it, her obsession growing not with who you were, but with what you might be. A man not fully formed, an identity always escaping. She looked at you not with love, but with diagnostic curiosity, as though her unconscious was scribbling notes faster than her heart could follow. Every time you avoided her question or smiled without answering, you gave her fantasy oxygen. She could handle your cruelty, she could survive your absence, but your enigma that she could not bury. That was the bruise she pressed again and again, just to feel it pulse. The feminine psyche does not unravel from wounds alone. It unravels from mysteries, from the seductive presence of a shadow just beyond reach. And you foolish, honest, you thought the best way to win her was to open all your drawers, confess all your past, hand her the blueprints to your soul. You explained your trauma. You gave her timelines. You thought transparency was love, but all she saw was flatness. No locked room, no suspense, no architecture of secrets, and so she wandered. She needed the unknown to desire you, not because she wanted you to hurt her, but because she needed to wonder if you could. That wondering is the crucible. That doubt is the altar. It's not about pain, it's about potential pain. She must imagine it. She must dream into it. She must construct you out of her own unconscious theater. Only then can obsession breathe. You became a myth, but not because of your words, because of your silences. She searched your photos like crime scenes. She replayed your tone like a scholar decoding symbols in a dead language. Every time you answered plainly, a piece of the spell fell away. Every time you said, "Don't worry, it's nothing," her mind spiraled deeper into narrative. You didn't know this was the dance. You thought she wanted certainty, But certainty is the death of seduction. It kills the fantasy, it exposes the stage lights, and she can't love you when she sees the curtain ropes. You are the hallway, and at the end of that hallway is a door, and behind that door, there must be something forbidden, even if it's nothing but silence. She does not need to enter. She needs to imagine what's behind it. She needs to project, invent, obsess. And if one day you open that door, if you show her the inside and there's nothing there, just a room, just a man, she will collapse. Not with disappointment, but with hatred, because she built a cathedral in your absence, and you handed her a broom closet. You ask why she grew cold, why she began punishing you with indifference, why the text shortened, why the eyes dulled. But you gave her everything. You were kind. You were real. You let her in. You made her feel safe. And that, precisely, is what ruined it, because mystery is not comfort. Obsession needs oxygen, and you sealed off every vent. You locked no doors. You cast no shadows. You made yourself available, present, predictable. That is how obsession dies. That is how the story ends, not with heartbreak, but with boredom. But when you withheld, truly withheld, without explanation, without games, without manipulation, only with authentic silence, she shook. She didn't call it desire. She didn't call it love. She called it frustration, maybe even mistrust. But she stayed, she watched, she returned, and in the dark theater of her unconscious, a film began to play. A man she could not decode, a door she could not open, a hallway with no end. And so she confessed in fragments. She asked indirect questions. She told stories that were never really about her. She revealed pain that wanted your attention, not to heal, but to see if you'd betray your distance. And you, if you gave in. If you stepped too far toward her, if you answered too fully, she recoiled, because now the game was over. The film ended. The door creaked open too easily. You didn't seduce her with charm. You didn't lose her with cruelty. You lost her the moment you made yourself legible. Because women like her, the ones who live in story, in psyche, in symbol, they do not want a man. They want a riddle wrapped in velvet. They want a room they cannot light, a hallway they can walk forever without finding the door. That's how you become the dream, not by being present, but by being withheld. You thought love meant surrender. You thought truth was always the key. But obsession doesn't bloom in clarity. It blooms in the fog. It survives on what is denied, what is guessed, what is glimpsed and never fully seen. She never wanted to have you. She wanted to become the only one who could unlock you. That was her true desire. To be the one who finally entered the door, not because you opened it, but because she earned it. But the joke is, there was never anything behind that door. Just more hallway, more echoes, more delay. And that is the trap. That is the architecture of her craving. She doesn't want to arrive. She wants to chase. She wants to lose herself in your absence. Not because she is broken, but because the feminine unconscious is built like a maze. It rewards the man who never fully arrives, who lets her project, who lets her fall into her own reflection, who never gives her the exit. You are the locked door. You are the silence behind it. You are the fantasy she built from your unfinished sentences, your careful omissions, your quiet exits. And if you ask her why she stays, why she returns, why she dreams of you even now, she won't have an answer, because the door never opened. A woman's desire attaches not to who you are, but to what her dream self imagines in your silence. She doesn't want your face. She wants the shape your absence takes in her mind, not your truth, but the outline of your withholding. You could be standing in front of her, bare and honest, But if her projection has already taken root, she won't see you. She'll see her dream walking in your body, speaking with your voice, and yet, somehow, never fully yours. She studies you, but only to confirm the myth. The tilt of your jaw becomes a clue. The delay in your text becomes a test. Your casual glance becomes a betrayal or a hidden message, depending on how the script in her mind unfolds. The mirror you offer her never shows her reality, only reflects what she cannot bear to admit. That her desire has no object, only echo. You smile, and she wonders who else you smiled at today. You go quiet, and she assumes you've grown cold. You speak openly, and she suspects you're hiding more. Because the obsession does not orbit you, it orbits the symbol she made of you. You are no longer man, but mirror, a surface that never confirms, never denies, only reflects her hunger back to her with haunting silence. You think you're safe by being emotionally honest, by being clear, but clarity only works in daylight, and she lives in shadow. Her longing isn't for who you are, it's for the fragments of herself she's lost, and now seeks to retrieve through you. Not the woman in the mirror, but the one who used to dream without shame, the one who hoped before the betrayals. She sees that self through you, and the moment you speak plainly, the dream shatters. Every mystery you leave unresolved becomes a mirror in which she glimpses a different version of herself. That's why she clings. That's why she won't let go. Not because of your charm, but because in chasing your silence, she feels alive again. And in that life, she imagines redemption. If she can just understand you, she thinks, she can finally understand the part of herself she locked away. But you are not her solution. You are the symptom. You are the projection screen, the dream vessel, the dark canvas where her psyche spills the colors she no longer controls. Her fantasy attaches to your lack, not to your presence, but to your refusal. Your restraint is erotic, not because it flatters her, but because it reawakens the primal wound, the unsolvable puzzle, the unfinished sentence. You think she loves you, but what she loves is the return of a forgotten ache the first time someone disappeared, the first time love meant danger. And still, she will not say this. She will say she misses you, that you confuse her, that you make her feel crazy. But what she means is this: your silence allowed her to resurrect the archetype, the man without a face, the father who never answered, the god who never spoke, the ghost who never apologized. And in your mystery, that phantom comes alive again, and she chases it, not because she wants closure, but because the chase gives her identity. You give her meaning by not giving her yourself. You think your detachment will push her away, but that is your illusion. Your detachment gives her space to mythologize, to construct a version of you that both saves and abandons her, the only kind of man her unconscious knows how to crave. If you ever gave her everything, you'd take away the scaffolding of her story. The ritual would collapse, the wound would close, and that would feel like death. And so she paints you again and again, not on canvas, but in thought. She rewrites your messages in her head. She rehearses conversations where you finally explain. She walks through your past like a curator through a haunted museum, not to understand you, but to possess you not as man, but as myth, as a door into her own pain, her own loss, her own unmet hunger. You become sacred, not because of who you are, but because of who she becomes when she imagines you. You awaken a self in her that has been dormant, the seeker, the questioner, the acolyte at the altar of romantic suffering. She will call this love, but it is not love, it is identity. reconstructed around longing. That's why the more you open, the more she closes. That's why the more you explain, the more she accuses. That's why the more you prove your devotion, the more she doubts it. Because every word you give her is a blow to the dream. Every truth you speak makes you more visible and less divine. She cannot worship what she fully understands, and she does not desire what she can fully explain. Her love requires your ambiguity. Her passion feeds on the unsaid. She tells herself that if she could just get an answer, she would feel peace. But peace is not what she's chasing. She's chasing the ache, the curve of a half-glimpsed truth, the flicker of potential betrayal, the possibility that this time the mystery might love her back. And you are the mirror that withholds. The worst thing you could ever do to her is to finally reflect her clearly. The moment she sees that you are not a god, not a puzzle, not a haunting, but simply a man with habits, fears, and a face that forgets the spell, will break. The projection will collapse. She will blink, step back, and realize she does not recognize you anymore, because the version of you she built never existed outside her need. She never loved you. She loved what your silence allowed her to imagine. She loved the way your distance made her feel alive. She loved the ritual of decoding. She loved the drama, the hunger, the ache of interpretation. And if you ask her now, even after all the pain, even after all the arguments and dreams undone, if you ask her what she remembers, it will not be your face. It will not be the sound of your voice. It will be that feeling, the rush of wanting, the swell of emotion when you said nothing. The nights she couldn't sleep because your absence echoed louder than your presence ever could. That is why she keeps the old messages. That is why she watches your stories. That is why she waits just long enough before replying. Not to punish you, but to feel again. To feel that dream self flicker, if only for a moment. To return to that haunted mirror and see once more the shadow she projected and called love. She doesn't want you. She wants her reflection, the one she lost, the one that only appears when you disappear. So she feeds the image, protects it, blames you when it falters. She loved you most when you said the least, because that was when the mirror didn't reflect. That was when it dreamed. The more she explains your mystery to herself, the less she recognizes her own reflection. She started writing about you long before she met you, not with your name, not with your eyes, but with an outline that matched her longing. A figure without history, a man without a face. The ache always preceded the story. She filled page after page with questions she pretended were about love, but they were always about absence. And when you appeared, she thought the pages had become flesh. But it wasn't you. It was the role she had carved in ink, a part waiting to be filled, and you, like a ghost answering its own summoning, fit perfectly into her narrative. Until you didn't. She began by documenting you, glances, delays, moments of silence. But soon the record turned into interpretation. Each sentence no longer described what you did, but what it meant. Your late reply wasn't forgetfulness, it was avoidance. Your smile wasn't joy, it was manipulation. Your gentleness wasn't kindness, it was strategy, because if she could explain you, she could contain you, and if she could contain you, she could silence the part of herself that feared you. The diary became her battlefield, not against you, but against her own disorientation. She needed to feel like she understood. She needed to translate the chaos, not because she loved you, but because without interpretation, your silence expanded inside her like smoke. She was no longer a woman in love. She was an analyst trapped inside her own experiment, dissecting your words, revisiting your tone, building theories to shelter herself from the truth she couldn't admit, that she didn't know who you were. And worse, that she had never really known who she was in your presence either. Each page became a map of distortion. You were the cipher, the enigma, the unstable element in her carefully constructed identity. She said she wanted the truth, but the moment she believed she found it, it slipped through her. You didn't change, her projections did. You didn't lie, her interpretations did. You became 10 men in 10 days, each more contradictory than the last. And still, she kept writing, because the more she explained, the more she lost, and the more she lost, the more she needed the writing to hold her together. Her diary was never about remembering, it was about control, the illusion of coherence, the hope that if she could just capture the moment, freeze your gaze in a sentence, pin your silence to the page, then maybe, just maybe, the ache would settle. But obsession doesn't want clarity, it wants motion. It feeds on rewriting. And so she returned to old entries, scribbled new meanings in the margins, turned certainty into suspicion, turned softness into manipulation. You became a script revised until even the author forgot where it began. But then came the moment she didn't expect, the quiet horror, the realization that in all those pages, all those theories, she had written herself out of the story. She could describe you in 1,000 variations, but when she looked for her own reflection, it was gone. She no longer recognized the woman who first began writing, the one who wanted love, the one who believed in connection. That woman had become a stranger, a detective, a scribe of shadows, and it was your fault, she thought. You stole her, you confused her, you made her doubt everything. But the truth, unspoken and bitter, was simpler. She used you to forget herself. Because you, in your mystery, gave her a new purpose. And once she made your silence the center of her life, everything else became decoration. Friendships faded, joy became dull, work, sleep, meals, all orbiting the same gravitational pull. Your unread messages, your ambiguous eyes, your half-truths. Or maybe they weren't lies at all, just silences. Just neutral moments she turned into myth. And now, the diary is full of theories, full of versions of you she can no longer track, full of desperate logic trying to explain feelings too old to name. She reads an old entry, one where she was certain you loved her, and feels a coldness now, a distance, like reading someone else's heartbreak. She remembers crying as she wrote it, but can't summon the tears now, because something has broken. Not the obsession, that still burns, but the identity around it. She doesn't know who she is anymore without your mystery. And that's when she realizes she's not writing about you. She never was. She was writing to delay her own disappearance. Your silence didn't kill her, it replaced her. The more she explained you, the less of herself remained. Because each explanation was a trade, a piece of self exchanged for a moment of false clarity. And now, even if you stood in front of her, told her everything, answered every question, it wouldn't matter. The woman who began the conversation is no longer here. Only the ghost who studied your behavior remains. She once believed that if you opened up, she'd feel safe again. But now, she fears the opposite. That the final truth will make her see the full collapse. That she wasn't chasing love. She was chasing distraction. She didn't want answers. She wanted anesthesia, and so she flips the page and writes again. Not because it brings her peace, but because she no longer knows what else to do. The writing is reflex. The obsession is architecture. You are no longer a man. You are her structure, the scaffolding of her emotional world. And deep down, she knows if she stops writing, the tower will fall, because the stranger in the diary is all that's left of her. And you are just the ink. She opens the last page, expecting an answer, but finds only a sketch, a doorway with no frame, and beneath it, in her own handwriting, he never spoke. I never stopped listening, and the ink never dried.